Well, UFC 184 is next on board, end of the month of February here. And Weidman, I guess, is injured. And so what was going to be a double main event is now down to Ronda Rousey versus Zingano as a lone main event. And that's cool because it's probably the only reason I would order anyway would be to watch that fight. Although the last Ronda Rousey fight that I paid for, I think it cost about $4 a second against Davis, because that's how quick it was over. 16 seconds, bang, and that was it. So decided last night to review what's available on the fight library, UFC fight library for Zingano, to form my opinions about how this was going to be, this fight was going to go. My wife and I sat and watched them together. There was only 3 fights for Zingano, versus Pennington, versus Tate, versus Nunez. And then just for the heck of it, although we've seen him before, we reviewed all of Ronda Rousey's. And it's definitely a different experience than, when I was reviewing for Diaz versus Silva, because, when you watch somebody do 20 fights or more, you get a really good sense of, how they operate. I think I've got Ronda Rousey, kind of her styles and her strengths and weaknesses kind of figured out, but Zingano's a little difficult because only had those 3 fights to go on. What I saw from her was that she's physically strong. She's got a wrestling background. I know when she was fighting Pennington, most of the fight was just her holding Pennington in a clinch against the fence, and she's really adept. She operates very well out of the Muay Thai clinch. So you see her throwing lots of knees and elbows, using that Muay Thai clinch, really pulling people down into it, or if she wants to, just tossing them over her back with it. So she likes to use that. She can take a beating, when she was up against Tate, and even more so against Nunez. She got beat up pretty good. Nunez had her down on her back and was grounding and pounding like crazy. I thought, I was surprised that she had as little effect as she did. That she was as little affected as she was from that beating. But it seemed like it's actually Nunez that ended up more affected as it went into round 2 and 3 of that fight. Nunez was out of energy, and Zingano just laid it on. So those seem to be her, her real strengths. She has an energy to go through at least what we've seen, 3 rounds without losing any steam. She has good elbows and knees, especially out of the Muay Thai clinch. She's a strong wrestler. She's good at escaping when she's on the ground with grappling. I haven't seen her do a lot of submission work, but she's at least good at escaping when others are putting her into submissions. All right, so that's my basic take on Zingano for strengths, for weaknesses. What I notice is that standing up boxing, she doesn't seem to know that as well. Her arms are often down, leading her to take a beat. And like when she was with fighting Miesha Tate, she kept putting her arms down, kept walking into punches and stuff. And but she's tough enough to take those punches. So that's the danger. Ronda could beat her up with fists, but she might be able to take it. So that was her biggest weakness that I saw. And again, like on the ground, I didn't see her make many attempts at with submissions work, but she was obviously very familiar with grappling and strategic escapes from other people's submissions. So I have to assume that she does have a pretty good submissions background too. All right, then she goes up against Ronda Rousey. So what's going to happen there? Well, Ronda, as we've seen, and there's 7 of her fights to review in the fight library. Ronda is a judo expert and a judo Olympian, and really, if Zingano clinches with her, I think that's going to be a bad thing, because I think Ronda's going to throw her around like a rag doll. Even though she's strong, Ronda knows her judo, takedowns, her throws, and I don't know, but I don't see Zingano being able to overcome that in a clinch situation. So that really takes out one of Zingano's strongest suits, is using her wrestling and her strength to clinch up with somebody and try to beat them up from there. I don't see that happening with Ronda Rousey. Zingano's strong with the escapes of the submissions, but is she strong enough to escape Ronda Rousey's submissions? That's another story, because Ronda has a way of working those arm bars, and not only arm bars, we see her work other things, the reverse triangle against, I think it was against Miesha Tate. That was a really wicked reverse triangle. Didn't win by it, but came close, I think, to submitting her with it. Is Zingano going to be able to escape that if they're on the ground? I don't know. I kind of don't think so. I think Ronda's submission work, is obviously, that's what's won her most of her title defenses. So I don't know about that. Boxing, standing up, striking, there I definitely see Ronda Rousey as the stronger player. So even though Kat Zingano's definitely a tough woman, and she's gonna probably put up a pretty good fight with Ronda, I don't see her winning. I see Ronda winning, and I think it'll probably be by submission, because Zingano can really take the strikes. But I think Ronda will throw her down and do what she does best and take her out by some kind of submission. So that's my prediction for the fight. I suspect it's going to go much longer than 16 seconds, but I don't think it'll go through more than a round and a half, 2 rounds. We'll see.